Hey, everybody, it's my pleasure to have as my guest today a figure that anybody who is familiar with the regulation of toxic chemicals knows his name well, Professor Gilles-Éric Séralini. He's a French professor, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I ran into Professor Séralini in 2013, a couple of years before the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer analyzed Monsanto's weed killer and found it to be a probable human carcinogen. A technical chemical journal retracted a well-known article about a group of rats that had been fed Roundup, Monsanto's weed killer, and developed cancer. The author of that article was Professor Séralini, and he had done something that nobody else had dared to do. Monsanto had used a bunch of tame scientists that we call biostitutes to do similar studies on rats, but all of those studies only lasted for 90 days. And we know that cancer does not develop in rats following exposure typically for 100 days. So by limiting their studies to 90 days, they were able to pretend that Roundup didn't cause cancer. And Professor Séralini had done something nobody else dared to do, which is to take the exact same test that Monsanto did for 90 days and do it for 2 years instead, which was the typical lifespan of a rat. And he found that 80% of the rats that consumed Roundup developed tumors compared to 30% in the control group. Not only that, but the tumors in the rats were 130% larger. We now know, because of the case that we brought with the Baum Hedlund law firm that I was privileged to be co-counsel on, we got hundreds of thousands of pages from Monsanto that are called the Monsanto papers. And we took those papers and had them unsealed. And for the first time, we saw Monsanto's internal communications. And we saw their strategy for destroying Professor Séralini's reputation and getting his article retracted. Monsanto had employed former intelligence agents and other hitmen destroy the reputations of scientists and to get retractions from the journals. It had a number of strategies, and it called those strategies. Each one of those strategies was designed to make sure that Roundup was not harmed by the science. One of the strategies was called Let Nothing Go. Another one was called Freedom to Operate, or FTO. Another was called Whack-a-Mole. In other words, every time a scientist would pop his head over the barricades and publish a study that showed that Roundup was unsafe, they would whack him. Project Spruce was another one. And these were, all of them were implemented by these black ops spies, including former members of the CIA and other intelligence agencies. And the key target was Professor Séralini, who does not take corporate money. He takes money, he finances his studies by going to organic consumers and small farmers and places that normally scientists do not go. They go to big corporate donors. And I'm very privileged to have Professor Séralini on it. So I've corresponded with him for years. I've read all of his papers. I've been an admirer from a distance, but we've never actually met. So very, very happy to meet you, Professor Séralini. And you have just published a new book called The Monsanto Papers, which discloses and chronicles your tale and the tale of all of these other scientists who got crushed by Monsanto over the years. So tell us some of the story.
Thank you. First, I'm really honored to speak with you. I think that you shed a lot of light in our world with all the affairs you are dealing with. In fact, I am just a researcher. I've been working during more than 30 years on these topics to understand how the pollution, and in particular due to GMOs and pesticides, how the pollution is killing people on the long run, making not only cancers, but also immune disease, endocrine and nervous diseases, and all kind of chronic pathologies we are, most of us, suffering from. So my research was on that, and I was also hired by the French government to be an expert on GMOs. And then I discovered that something was going wrong in this topic, because they were not making the good experiments, and they were not really interpreting truly the results. So I already had several court affairs to make the transparency on that. And when Beaumedlun cabinet came to me, Catherine Forgy, in fact, in Normandy, to visit my university and to ask, what can we do to prove that all our patients do suffer from Roundup, the biggest herbicide in the world, I said, well, you should first look at what Monsanto has done. And they worked on the Monsanto papers, and I asked that from 2016. I was myself working on the topic since 30 years. And then we had the deepest investigation that I know of about one of the biggest big pharma companies in the world, to understand how they can know about the crimes that they are doing. We did an investigation in 2.5 million pages, and I was cited 56,000 times in these pages. So they crossed everything with my research to hide things. And as an investigator, my goal was only the transparency on this. We discovered that they knew that they were making crimes, that they were having toxic products with the Roundup, the main herbicide of the world, but not only, with also the GMOs that were transformed, that were modified in order to contain this pesticide. That people do not really always understand that most of the GMOs are modified to contain a lot of Roundup, to be tolerant to it.
So let me just explain that to our listeners. Originally, when we were told that we could genetically modify food, we were the big GMO companies were saying, when you do this, it's going to reduce the amount of pesticides that you use. You're going to have food that creates bigger kernels of corn, larger strawberries, higher quality food, more meat, more of everything, and great abundance, a cornucopia of the green revolution without chemicals. In fact, what GMOs have primarily been used for is to make crops so that they're tolerant of pesticides. So
yeah, I agree with Roundup.
You put a gene in a corn seed and makes it so the pesticide, which will kill anything that's green, will not kill that corn.
That's right.
That way you can saturate the landscapes from airplanes with this toxin, and the only thing on that landscape that will grow will be the Roundup Ready corn and Roundup Ready soy, and now they have Roundup Ready wheat and barley and sorghum and all of these other plants that are Roundup Ready, and they've actually dramatically increased the use of pesticides and the exposures to our children rather than to reduce them.
That's right. You are fully right that it's really devastating for the environment, but not only, because the plant is itself, the plant does survive, either soy or corn or others, oilseed rape and so on. They do survive with big quantities of these toxic pesticides in the seed, in the plant that we eat or that the animals eat. And we have discovered in the book, and this is a revelation, why that works like that. In fact, Roundup does contain toxic poisons that have not been declared, and this is completely new, that have not been declared to the authorities. And this is why they knew that they made a crime. Donna Farmer, the main chief toxicologist from Monsanto, now from Bayer, who has bought the company, and she works for Bayer.
Bayer aspirin, but I think it's the world's largest pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
In the middle of our trial, Bayer purchased Monsanto for $63 billion. Monsanto had a toxicologist that worked for them for very many years who's notorious across the globe as a liar, as a dishonest person who formulates phony studies in order to exonerate, exculpate Monsanto's chemical arsenal. And her name is Donna Farmer, and she now works for Bayer. So you were saying?
What we reveal in the book is that they knew that they made crimes, and we have a new revelation, in fact. The new revelation is that Roundup and many pesticides in the world do contain hidden poisons that are, in fact, made with petroleum waste, petroleum chemical carcinogens. So we have understood why this is carcinogenic and why this is endocrine disrupting. And this petroleum waste is recycled in pesticides. And GMOs are designed to be able to contain all this chemical toxic waste from petroleum. And also it's spread in the environment. And this explains many cancers, and not only, I would like to underline that, the lymphomas, for which Monsanto and Bayer have lost 10 billion in court, but also many other diseases. So today there are about 130,000 patients that are suffering from that, according to the court. However, they may be 1 or 2 million patients, maybe more, that have suffered from different chronic diseases due to Roundup. So in fact,
what you're saying is, in our case, we were only able to address one of the many diseases
that's right,
Roundup, which was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. There are 130,000 clients of all of our law firms who were able to divide the $10 billion that we won from Monsanto/Bayer. But actually what you're saying is the number of people that actually are sick from all the other ingredients and from different diseases is 10 or 20 times that large.
Maybe larger even, because the nervous disease have joined the story recently, and all the degenerative disease that we can see in our polluted world. However, this is the first time that we understand how it works, because they are recycling petroleum waste in pesticides. And this is not known even today. I think there is a big secret that not only we have discovered by our research, but which is proven by the Monsanto papers. And I understood that because I am at the center of these Monsanto papers in their documents. I think that today we can go further to forbid most of the pesticides because they do contain hidden poisons, and that we have discovered not only in my research, but in the Monsanto papers. And this is very important for the future of the world, because we can have another agronomy, we can have another agriculture in the world to avoid have a devastation on the environment and to make people hungry and to make people miserable because they do not have enough money to raise enough animals and mammals. We can do the things a lot better. And not only we have solutions, but we have discovered for the first time the mechanism by which these big pharma companies have hidden the reality. And this is, I think, a unique example, because before, all the court affairs were talking about pollutants one by one, pesticide one by one, but we have discovered something a lot more general in the crimes that they do commit in this system.
Well, so what you're saying is that the testing that was done by Monsanto addressed only one of the ingredients, and that ingredient was glyphosate.
That's right.
They made
The
sure,
debate is on glyphosate mostly.
and they tested glyphosate in its pure form.
Yes,
Roundup actually includes a formulation of solvents, of adjuvants,
of course.
that allow the glyphosate to penetrate the plant and that also penetrate human flesh and human organs. And when you add all of those chemicals, it becomes far more toxic. It amplifies and gives synergy.
Well, it's even a little bit more complex than that because the poisons act by themselves. They do not need glyphosate. For instance, we have demonstrated that in the most recent pesticides that are without glyphosate, but do contain acetic acid or pelargonic acid, they have these hidden poisons that act to intoxicate people and to intoxicate the environment. And you know what they are? Most of the agencies know them, like benzoapyran, which is one of the highest carcinogenic compounds known. They are petroleum residues, and these compounds, which are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and heavy metals, such as arsenic or lead or nickel and other heavy metals that are used in our industry, they are also recycled in pesticides. So in fact, a good part of the benefit of these companies come from the fact that they recycle petroleum waste together with even nanoparticles and plasticizers. So we have discovered a crucial point, which is at the center of many problems that we have in our society, because we live, for instance, in Roundup that you cited, there is only 40% glyphosate or anything else, but there are 60% of secret compounds, and this is a real shame not to put the transparency and the light on of these compounds, which are by themselves carcinogenic and highly toxic, but not only carcinogenic, nervous toxic at a nervous level, toxic at an endocrine level, at an immune level, etc. And this is really damaging our world, our public health, and the consequences on our world are great. We are based on a petroleum system, and to recycle these petroleum residues in our food, finally, is a real crime.
You know, in the United States, it's difficult for us to see how to solve this problem because the amount of money that is pouring into our political system from Monsanto, from Bayer, from the chemical industry, from the oil industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Big Pharma has more lobbyists on Capitol Hill than there are congressmen, senators, and Supreme Court justices combined. It puts more money into lobbying than any other industry. It's very, very difficult to find a path to control the greed of those industries in this country. In Europe, isn't any different.
It begins to be a little different, because we have 119 European deputies that have made a group in order to not a new political group, but an environmental group of people from different parties in order to make the transparency on how the agencies, the health agencies do to authorize all these products. What is special is that we have discovered that it is the oil or the petroleum lobby who is able to make crimes to follow on their activities, and they have done many of those, that have in fact recycled the petroleum waste, which is numerous, in the food, in the environment, through pesticides. These hidden poisons are kept there since the Second World War in these pesticides because there is a secret part of the composition of the pesticide, which is not revealed to the public. And for the first time with this book, with the Monsanto papers, we have seen that they admit and know that. And this is very new. And I discovered in the same time with my research, these results that I'm publishing in peer-reviewed journals. So it is very important, and yes, we have politicians that begin to be aware of the situation. They don't know yet how to deal with it. And I think that the more there will be light in this story, the more people will find solutions, because we can have another world is possible, and we can have agronomy and agriculture to feed the world, to feed 15 billion people in the world without this petroleum industry, without pesticides, and with permaculture, co-cultures, etc. We know that we can do that. And you know what? This industrial agriculture using a lot of pesticides is probably responsible, according to the big scientific corporation, Honest Corporation, is responsible for 30% of the modification of the climate change. So everything is linked, because, you know, we spend 10 kilocalories petroleum in order to eat 1 kilocalorie consumable of a burger, for instance. So we can have another world without consuming so many petroleum, without eating pesticides. We don't need to, and people will live better. I think we have discovered how they make crimes since the Second World War, recycling the petroleum waste in the food.
And we now know that chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides actually reduce productivity, agricultural productivity on farms, and destroy soils permanently.
Yeah, we explain also in the book and in this book, on the Monsanto papers and in other books, that we know how to deal with very good system, and that there are solutions to change this petroleum-based agriculture. The thing is, people don't know that when they use pesticide, they eat petroleum waste. And it is very important that this new light on how the crimes do function in agriculture, that we shed a new light on this system in order to be able to vote clearly in the parliaments in the world. And we think there are solutions.
Can you hold up a copy of your book?
I wrote this book with my co-author Jérôme Douzelet, because I was unable to see all this shit in the functioning of big pharma companies alone. We needed to read a lot of these papers, and we needed to go deep in this investigation in order to understand many details. So what's new is that we understood a lot of things now with all these discoveries through research, through the research of my group since 30 years, but also this crossed with what the company has hidden. And this is why they fight against me so much. They probably, some people linked to them tried to kill me, and at least first scientifically and then physically. We say what we know today, but I think there is more. I had the chance to survive all this system, but today many people didn't survive in the patients that you helped for this story. And again, I underline that the non-Hodgkin lymphomas is just a small part of the problem.
Dr. Gilles-Éric Séralini, thank you so much for the book.
Thank you so much.
For putting us on the podcast.
Thank you very much.